Unity's scriptable render pipelines provides rendering solutions that can be tailored towards your project's needs. In today's video, we are showing you how you can upgrade your existing project from using the built-in renderer to use the universal render pipeline. When it comes to graphics, you need the power to push your visuals and control to be able to decide what matters to you most. Developers can use Unity's pre-made pipelines, develop their own pipelines, or customize and extend an existing pipeline to meet their project's needs. There are two scriptable rendering pipelines with different focuses and purposes. The high-definition render pipeline, HDRP, is best to use for pushing graphics as far as you can on high-end hardware while delivering performant, powerful, high-fidelity visuals. The universal render pipeline, URP, is best to use if you want full Unity platform reach with best-in-class graphics quality and performance. In the description box down below, you'll find more information on scriptable render pipelines, as well as a link to the LEGO microgame we're using in this video. Installing URP. The LEGO microgame uses Unity's built-in render pipeline by default. You can verify which rendering pipeline any project uses by viewing the project settings under Edit, Project Settings, under the Graphics tab. There is a field called Scriptable Render Pipeline Settings. If this field is empty, then your project is using the default built-in render pipeline. Otherwise, you may be using a custom scriptable render pipeline, the high-definition render pipeline, or the universal render pipeline. To get the universal render pipeline, open up the Package Manager by selecting Window, Package Manager. In the top left-hand corner, make sure that the Unity registry is selected. If it's not showing up, you can click the button and select Unity Registry. Find the universal render pipeline in the Package Manager and select it. It's recommended to select a version that is verified to work with your version of Unity. Since this project is using 2020.1, let's use the latest verified version, 8.2.0. Click the Install button on the bottom right-hand corner to download and install this package into your Unity project. Once installed, you may get a pop-up which states that Unity will re-import your materials to upgrade them to be URP compatible. Select OK and allow the importer to re-import the materials currently in your project. Once the materials are re-imported, we'll need to do a few more steps so that our project is actually using the universal render pipeline. In our project view, we'll need to create a render pipeline asset. Right-click in your project view and navigate to Create, Rendering, Universal Render Pipeline, Pipeline Asset, Forward Renderer. Two assets are generated. The Universal Render Pipeline asset, which we named default_URP, and the Forward Renderer asset, default_URP_renderer. Open up the graphics window in your project settings by selecting Edit, Project Settings, Graphics. Select and drag the default URP asset to the Scriptable Render Pipeline Settings field. Now your project will use URP as its current renderer. Upgrading to URP. Although we're using URP as our renderer, we can see that many of our materials in our scene view are actually pink, which indicates that there is a rendering error. Well, if we view one of the materials, we can see that the material is still using the built-in render pipeline's standard shader for the material. The built-in standard shader will not work with URP, so we'll need to change it to a URP-compatible shader. In our material, we can select Standard Universal Render Pipeline Lit. Once the shader is changed, we can see that our material is actually showing its original color. But going through our materials one by one is tedious. We can upgrade all materials in our project to use a URP-compatible shader by selecting Edit, Render Pipeline, Universal Render Pipeline, Upgrade Project Materials to Universal RP. A window will pop up which will ask if you wish to proceed with the upgrade. Click Proceed and let the upgrader finish. Once finished, when we view our scene in Game View, we can see that our meshes and materials are now properly rendering. However, custom shaders that can't be automatically converted will need to be rebuilt. For example, in the LEGO microgame, we've rewritten our grid shader to be URP compliant as grid_URP. If you have a set of materials you would like to upgrade instead of every single material in your project, you can use the Upgrade Selected Materials to Universal RP option in the Rendering submenu. It's worth noting that when migrating from the built-in render pipeline, Built-in standard shaders are typically associated with the lit shader from URP, and built-in mobile shaders are associated with the simple lit shader from URP. Graphic settings. With URP, many of the graphic settings moved from the project settings to the Universal Render Pipeline asset. If we select and view the Universal Render Pipeline asset in our inspector, we can see options to modify how our render pipeline behaves. The renderer list references the forward renderer asset, which is the secondary asset that was generated when we created the Universal Render Pipeline asset. This is where we can add custom render passes to draw additional effects on top of the renderer. The pipeline asset has many options we can adjust, such as anti-aliasing to smooth out the jagged lines, how or whether or not shadows are rendered, what batching method should be used to help further optimize our rendering, and settings for post-processing. URP comes with its own integrated version of post-processing and is incompatible with the post-processing v2. While we cover the basics of upgrading to URP from the built-in render pipeline, your project may be using an older version of URP. To learn more about URP features and its upgrade process, we highly recommend visiting the package documentation, which is linked in the description box down below. Thanks for watching.